Hey everybody, I'm Johnny Havoc.
And I'm Newt.
What you're going to watch is a little gameplay footage of the video game Warhammer Vermintide 2. We're going to talk our way through it a little bit and show off what a couple of the characters that we've recently made costumes for look like and how they react in the world of Warhammer. We're playing it to show you that some of the inspiration we get for our costumes comes from video games as well as movies and TV shows and cartoons. So this is Witch Hunter Captain Victor Saltzpyre.
This is Kerillian Waystalker Elf.
This game's been out for this version's been out for 2 years. The previous one, Vermintide 1, came out about 3 years ago.
And we were originally going to do costumes for the first game, but we put it off just due to laziness and other costumes getting in the way. But I'm very glad that we did, because in our opinions, the costumes had improved by the second game.
Yeah, definitely. They got more realistic. You got to see more realistic looking armor. Saltzpyre, for instance, looked very anime in the first game.
As did Kerillian, and one of the reasons I put off making Kerillian was because in the first game she had a fur coat, and being Floridians, fur isn't a fun costume accessory. So this one's way more elegant and just...
Nice shot. You got like everybody.
I'm glad we got that on video.
Yeah, you definitely don't want a furry costume when you live in Florida. You want to avoid that.
Yeah.
So in this version, you can see this Kerillian, her wood armor changed from the first game. It looks very cool. It's much more natural. Looks like it's been just bark stripped straight off of a tree. We'll talk about how we made that, along with other aspects of our costumes. So enjoy. Thanks for watching us goof around in a game for a second.
Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Johnny Havoc.
And I'm Newt, and welcome back to the real world.
I think I would have preferred staying in the video game.
Wouldn't we all? Also, welcome to our first video of 2020.
Hopefully in 2020 we make more than 6 videos.
Yeah, so let's see the costumes that we just showed you from the game. So this is Kerillian. She is a woodland elf, and this is her default Waystalker skin. If you play the game, you know that she looks down upon the others, calling them mayflies and lumberfoots. So throughout the game, all the different characters reveal little parts about their past through the dialogue. And for Kerillian, we know that she is in exile, but for what we don't know, because she doesn't talk about her past very much. So let's go through the costume from head to toe. So the first thing I made was actually the hood. And as you can see, it has this very nice point to it, and I lucked out in finding this very nice material. With the wig, I just bought it and styled it. The ears I found on Amazon, I bought those, but I had to paint them closer to my skin tone. The mask, this is actually my 4th version, because though it looks simple, it's very hard to actually get the curve of your nose and the shape just right. And the mask is the same material as the shirt. The shirt and the pants and the gloves were just very simple patterns I made myself. Very simple, basic shirt pant pattern, because most of it gets covered up by the armor and the belts and everything. For the belt, we bought the leather and sat there and punctured all of these little grommets into there. And this part was sculpted on to an existing belt buckle, and then just added embellishments here and there. And the best part about making the costume was definitely the wooden armor. And that was just EVA foam that we both just sat there with different Dremel bits and dremeled in all of this beautiful wood texture. And then after that it was all painted, and then the moss was added with tacky glue. And and all the pieces were glued together. The core set is also EVA foam, which again, we sat there and dremeled all these lines into it. And then once it's all painted up, it just looks like wicker. All these little holes in the armor were made with a soldering tool, which works beautifully with EVA foam. And all this rope you see going in and out of it, I just bought a plain white pure cotton rope, and then I dyed it the different colors that I need, because it's way cheaper to just dye it yourself if you have all the dyes on hand. And for her quiver, it was made the exact same way that her armor was made, with EVA foam and a lot of dremeling. For the arrows, it's just simple wooden rods with that very thin craft foam that you can get pretty much anywhere, glued on as the feathers and cut up. For the bits of green poison on the arrows, I just used a 3D paint. And for the main bow and arrow, for the bow, we just found a little kid's bow for very cheap and modified it with a bunch of EVA foam and embellishments to make it look more natural. And for the poison tip, because if you play the game, you know that one of her most awesome weapons is her poison arrow, which is like a glowing green. And for that, I just used a mirrored acrylic. And of course, it's fastened there for safety reasons at cons. And yeah, that was it.
This is the Victor Saltzpyre costume. This is the one that you start out with at the beginning of Vermintide 2. In Vermintide 1, he was a witch hunter in that. In Vermintide 2, he's still a witch hunter, but he's been promoted. So this is his witch hunter captain's uniform. Victor is kind of self-righteous, he's uptight, he's got a bunch of funny dialogue. You get the sense that he's put this group together, because in the end times, a lot of people don't understand that what's happening in the world, but he and the select few have this understanding that, hey, things are getting really bad. So let's talk about the costume, and again, we'll start from head to toe. The hat is just made out of pleather. There's cardboard inside. It's the kind of cardboard that you get from Home Depot or Lowe's or one of those construction supply stores. That's helped giving it support. And then it was sewn together. The little bits of metal are textured aluminum sheet that have been cut and pressed on there. The skull is resin. The cross is made out of craft foam that's been cut individually, then layered, coated. The candles, you can see on that side. That's one of the funny things about it. The candles are made out of PVC pipes that have some of the little electronic tea light candles put into it, and the battery pack is actually in the tall part of the hat itself. So moving down, I found this great material. You can find it. It's part of the Yaya's Cosplay costume material, and it looks very much like chainmail, but it's lightweight and it's definitely more breathable than some materials. So I got some of that, and that's his chainmail here. So I went ahead and sewed his tunic underneath. Everything is sewn together. The collar is sewn to the chainmail. The slash and puff sleeve is sewn to that. The undershirt is sewn to that as well. His other shirt, everything's sewn together, so it's all one piece, kind of like a cheap Halloween costume, but it's all been assembled together to make it easy to get on. That also means it's fewer layers. Okay, and then moving on, his coat or vest, this is made out of pleather. It's 2 layers in some places, single layers in others. That was, we made a custom template for it and we sewed it. And then the trim on there, that's actually leather paint that's been painted in place to give it some highlights. Some custom little buttons that have skull and crossbones, because you can't have Warhammer without skulls. Okay, so when it came time to make the armor, that was one of the cool parts about the game, was in this version of the game, he got some really good looking armor. This is expanded PVC sheet that's been heat bent and formed into shape. So for the bicep, I measure around my arm, make sure it's going to be big enough, and then heat bend it to that shape. For the shoulder, virtually the same kind of thing. When it came to all the little details on it, that's different. Newt sculpted these olive branches
And then we molded those, and then we went ahead and cast those out of resin. And since they're so thin, you can heat them up or put them in a pot of boiling water and bend them to the shape that you need. So that was done there. The skull was sculpted on separately, and that's actually affixed to the armor itself. And then the twin-tailed comet that you see here in the front, as well as this badge slash buckle, these two things were a combination of being 3D printed and sculpted. So first the files were created, then they were 3D printed, and then I turned them over to Newt, and Newt then took some epoxy sculpt or some freeform air, and she went ahead and embellished the flames to make them look more three-dimensional and rounded. So for the rest of the armor, the elbow, that was made out of expanded PVC sheet as well. The gauntlet was purchased. You can find vendors online that actually make really, really good costume armor. And in the case of this, with the complexity of what was there, I didn't really want to dive into that. Plus the thing was, when I did a search for it, I found that gauntlet or a set of gauntlets that looked almost identical to what Saltzpyre had. So for cheap money, for 50, 60 bucks, you can get actual metal armor pieces. So what makes up Saltzpyre's costume is all the little details. It's from the skulls on his gauntlet to he's got a book that he wears on his belt, which is made out of EVA foam. It's just heat bent, cut, and then using a razor knife and an X-Acto, I scored the edges of it to make it look like individual pages. All his strapping and belts, that was all custom cut leather. The small skulls and other little embellishments were made by hand using resin and plastic. And then even his gauntlet glove, that was highlighted. His puff sleeve, this was made out of layers of fabric sewn together individually. And then this is a leather strap with a whole bunch of little rivets in it. Okay, so as we move down Saltzpyre's costume, we get to the pants. And the pants were pretty easy because not much of them is seen in the game. These are just blue jeans that have been weathered. Over top the pants at the knees are his knee pads or knee armor. It's expanded PVC sheet that's been custom cut, heat bent. On the sides they have a point to them, kind of like the flames of the twin-tailed comet. The skulls are affixed. The skulls are made out of resin. As we get down beneath those, that's just a pair of pirate boots. Just costume pirate boots that you can find online, but they've been modified because they have a strap and a big old pilgrim belt buckle applied to them. On the toes are big old metal looking spurs, but those spurs are actually just made out of EVA foam that has been cut, heat bent, glued, and then weathered. And then the whole thing together gives you Saltzpyre, and that's what it took to make them. So besides the two costumes we're about to primarily show you, there was a third costume, and over 3 months we worked as a team to put all these costumes together. Our friend Dan, who plays games with us frequently and is a big fan of the game as well, he makes for the perfect Kruber.
Oh yeah, he's already got the perfect Kruber beard.
So with his help, over about 3 months, we would get together on the weekends and we would work on everybody's costume. So we're going to show you some behind the scenes stuff for his costume as well as ours.
God damn it. Ah.
Ready? One more time. I'll start it.
Alright.
Ready?
Alright.
Hi, everybody. I'm Johnny Havoc.
And I'm Moose.
We're playing Warhammer Vermintide 2. And there's a gas rat coming up behind me. I'm about to shoot him. Okay, got him. And he falls to the ground. Right on top of the other one I shot a little while ago. Okay. That's how many takes this has been, everybody. There's enough takes that there's like multiple gas rats there.
Fight on! Yeah.